Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show here on New Zealand Sports Radio. Hi, I'm Paul. I'll be your host this evening in my Wellington Farah Palmer Cup, sorry, not Farah Palmer Cup, NPC jersey, because Paul Tito is heading over to the Western Force. We covered that in the 5 p.m. lockdown beers and rugby chat earlier. So if you want to know about his move to Western Force, then do go back and listen to that chat that I had with Stephen Harris. It's available as video, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and also as a podcast on our good podcatchers. Wow, I'll get my tongue around it eventually. So we're going to be talking about this evening. What we'll talk about this evening? Well, we'll talk about the Rugby Championship, but backwards and forwards. We'll also talk about about the laws. Look forward to the Farah Palmer Cup and the NPC getting back into action this weekend. We might even talk about something that World Rugby are looking at, which is having the Rugby World Cup every 2 years. Interesting idea there. And joining me to talk about all that kind of stuff, it's Boa. How are you doing, sir?
Very well. This is Boa too, in his Manukau Rowers black after-function shirt. My beloved Manukau Rowers, nestled in South Auckland, the most visible rugby-playing club in Auckland. It's just on the right-hand side of the motorway if you're driving past. And during the season, if you're around, come visit, crack a beer. Lovely atmosphere up there. Doing well, Paul. I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone is safe, particularly all of us here in Auckland doing it for the team of 5 million. Looking forward to the show as always.
So yes, thank you to the team of those people in the 09 who are doing it tough. Do please keep following the rules, and let's get out of lockdown as soon as possible. Now, I've been up to Manukau Rovers, and yes, it's definitely good to go into the club rooms, have a beer after a game. Very welcoming. So do head down there. I'm on the Boundary Road Brewery beers this evening. I'm running a bit low, so I'll be hitting the supermarket tomorrow to get myself some more. Thinking I might go for some Waikato draft this time or something different, but to get a different colour can to go on the old row there behind me. So yes, for those of you on the podcast, you can't see my wall of beer cans that's growing during this lockdown. So from the weekend, obviously we had the 2 Rugby Championship games. The All Blacks milling the Jaguares. It's not the Jaguares, the Pumas. Dear me. And with the last kick of the game after the hooter had gone, we had Quade Cooper knocking over the points for the Wallabies to beat the Springboks. Now, we did post-match reactions to both those games, so again, you can go back and listen to those. We won't go into the games in detail, but key takeaways from the All Blacks versus the Pumas game from you, Bar.
Well, a couple of things for me. I think the All Blacks, the willingness to attack for 80 minutes. They didn't take the foot off the pedal, if you recall. First game against the Wallabies, Bledisloe won at Eden Park. Pretty much after 50 minutes, the game was won. They took the foot off the pedal. They conceded all those tries. This was a very different beast. Keep in mind, we're missing, 6 frontline starters, potentially, including skipper Adi Savea. So I really liked what the All Blacks did. And, they were very cohesive in recycling possession. Because keep in mind, the Argentinian Pumas, they were very resolute. Obviously mixed in with a bit of line speed, which was offside most of the time. And of course, they got away with plenty at the breakdown. So I was very, very pleased with the All Blacks' attitude. They just kept relentlessly attacking, and they were very professional. They looked like a team who had a very, very clear goal in wanting to finish the Pumas, and that's exactly what they did. The second thing I want to say is, that goal kick, that last shot at goal, that told us, this was a team. When things, no matter how good, how good things are going, they're willing to actually just slow everything down, take a deep breath, reassess, take the points, kill the clock, and treat every game pretty much like a final. So it bodes really well. Some really good progressive form lines, which we'll talk about later on. But for me, those are the 2 key takeaways from the All Blacks.
Yes, the All Blacks did have obviously a comprehensive thing. I think they'll be as happy about that 0 as they are about the 39 in that one. And really did dominate the game via possession, which is a different way of of play. We're seeing lots of teams willing to give the ball away and be attacked. But no, this was a possession-led domination of the game. Simon says, "Yeah, Argentina will need to adjust to the new climate. The New South American tournaments will take time to develop." And yes, and he says, "Yeah, my understanding is the South American sports competitions feeds into the European club competitions." Yeah, and this is, I guess, this problem is around with the loss of the Jaguares. We're seeing that cohesion and the access to the players to develop and work with them has disappeared. And I think it's going to be it's a transition period for the Pumas as they figure out how to manage a team where you don't have control of the players, and that's going to be I think it's going to be a real problem for Argentina going forwards. I think we might end up back in that cycle where for 3 years they're not quite so good, and then come around World Cup time, they step things up, like we've seen from some of the Pacific Nations teams, because they'll get 3 to 4 months together ahead of that Rugby World Cup. And I think what we're seeing here is a team that isn't together because they are at so many different clubs in Europe trying to come together and be a team.
I just want to jump on Nocturnal Right's comment he makes. Argentina got to be worried. That's very correct, because one of the worrying factors I did notice was Argentinians didn't have that same go-forward gusto. And I think it had a lot to do with the All Blacks tackle technique and where they entered the tackle, which is what we call the sternum or the breadbasket line. If you saw that first hit from the kickoff, Nepo Laulala absolutely folded. I think it was Pablo Matera in half. And that pretty much set the tone. Every single hit the All Blacks put on had purpose. And I think that really dented both the physical as well as psychological confidence of the Pumas. And most of their movements are very, very lateral. So all what it meant was that All Blacks jockey defense, they just kept moving them out wide. They stayed patient, wait for the turnover, and they absolutely killed it. So, yes, worrying signs for the Pumas. And what's even more worrying is, I saw Coach John Plumtree was saying that most of his first choice players who are out for injury duty are Patrick Torpoloto, skipper Adi Savea. They're all ready to go. So I don't think this All Black side is going to let up. They're going to be ruthless. I think they've got one foot on the throat of these Pumas, and I think they will want to carry on this form line and probably step up that much more. So this is great progressive form line and a great build-up. And for once, despite all the injuries, everything seems to be falling in place for the All Blacks.
So from a competition point of view, with the All Blacks picking up their third try bonus point win of the competition, this means that they can go into the next game with against Argentina next weekend, and generally with a with a bit of relaxing. If they do lose the game, it's not a big deal because they are 6 points, I think, or 5 points ahead of the Springboks. Now, obviously, that's not what they're looking for, but it does mean that that this isn't a must-win. The pressure to win this game isn't there. I think we will see probably towards 10 or so changes in the starting 15. I expect a very different lineup for this next game, and we'll see, and that'll give us an idea as to who is being rested or being for the two Springboks clashes. I think we'll see the first choice team out of this squad for those two games, and we'll see we'll see as many of them as possible rested for this one. So I do think, it's, as you say, things have fallen into place for the All Blacks in this competition, and they'll be very happy with where they are with that. Moving on then to the second game with the Wallabies up against the Springboks. What were your key takeaways on this one?
Well, I have to say the statistical pattern strikes again. I did say it last week on this show that the Springboks and guys and girls, these statistical patterns, they exist for a reason, right? You can call it superstition. The man upstairs controlling the universe, whatever it is. For whatever reason, South Africa, whenever they come to Australia, they struggle. And every single time after they've won a World Cup and they've come to Australia, they've always lost to the Wallabies. So that tells you something very, very telling. Look, South Africa really have only themselves to blame. They played some type of rugby which was, well, non-existent. They just kicked the ball up in the air and hoped something happened. 9 times out of 10, it didn't. And even though the game was, come on, let's face it, it was stop-start. It was like waiting for your Uber Eats driver to turn up at some point. I think there was like 7, maybe 8 water breaks. It was stop, start, slow. And most of the time, the Wallabies, particularly Quade Cooper, he hardly had anything to do. So it was the perfect way to play people into form. So South Africa came to Australia hoping not to lose. Let me say that again, hoping not to lose. They didn't come out to win. And they played, they hoped that cruise mode would get them home. It didn't. And fate had it. That very last play, they gave away a penalty. And I have to say, referee Luke Pearce, fantastic job. Overall, he did a brilliant job. And lo and behold, who turns up? Quade Cooper. And always trust the Kiwi to bail out Australia. So, look, South Africa, they've only got themselves to blame. They have all these fantastic strike weapons out wide. But whenever they try to run the ball, they just got lost in the moment because you just can't snap out of that whole mentality, that whole culture they've built. We're saying, look, we play a very staunch, boring form of rugby to win. Well, guess what? What worked yesterday is not going to work today, and it's sure as heck not going to work tomorrow. So they've got some serious re-strategizing to do.
Look, they had this game won if Pollard could have kicked his goals, right? They left 10 points out there. The Wallabies took all of their points, and that was the difference in this game. If Pollard had kicked his goals, the Springboks win this game, and we're not saying they have to change their full game plan. So, look, they don't need to change their full game plan. I do believe they were flat. They weren't. There was only one period I remember where the defence actually pushed back the attack, and then after that we saw the Hooper break down the left-hand side, and that's generally how that's what they're relying on. They're relying on their defence to stop and push back the attacking team. As the attacking team then goes through its phases and loses ground, they have to kick it, and then they go into a kicking duel that they generally are better at. They just didn't. Their defence couldn't do that, and they missed their penalties. I think everything had to go right for the Wallabies to win. It did. I think for the Wallabies, I can't see the Wallabies winning again next week, for my mind, because I don't think everything will go their way like it did last weekend.
Well, Paul, I disagree with what you say about everything had to go right for the Wallabies. Everything didn't go right. I mean, they were full of errors and very indisciplined. They gave away some stupid penalties, no arms tackles, grass cutter tackles. The one thing I have to criticize the Springboks on is they had 6 very kickable penalties, 6 easy 3-pointers, that's 18 points. Instead, they went for touch. They did score twice off driving fishtail mauls, but on those other 4 occasions, they coughed it up, gave the possession back to Australia. And that, for me, was, as you rightly pointed out, Pollard missed his kicks. And had they attempted some of those kicks, it would have been a very different story. So, to me, it was just brain-dead tactics because all they knew was to put it into left-hand downtown corner shop, you make a cup of tea, and then just drive it over. And they did that successfully on 2 occasions. But for the rest of the time, because it became so predictable, they were hitting number 4 in the middle of the line-out. The Wallaby Maul defense held up on 3 occasions. So for me, that was the defining point, and it all came down to tactics, and they just looked flat as a bad beer on a Saturday night.
I just don't think they got off. I don't think they got off the plane well, which as I say, I think an extra week we'll see a different, a more up for it South African side. I don't expect to see much of a change in tactics, but I do expect them to execute better next time. Now, as I've got a coach on and someone who knows a bit about, hopefully a bit about scrummaging, I want to ask you this. I put out a tweet saying, where did that Wallaby scrum come from? and that was after the scrum just before half time, which they've been going backwards pretty much the whole of the half, and then they suddenly won that one. Now, this tweet came from Dave to me. He said, the Wallabies had been trying for a hooker squeeze all first half. South Africa went into that scrum expecting the same thing, only to get a tight head pinch with a tight pivot. All credit to Alatoa for that. It takes a really strong tight head to make that work. So did you see something like along those lines where they had been trying a tactic of what they call a hooker squeeze here, or what he calls a hooker squeeze, and then changing to a tight pinch?
That is certainly one piece of the puzzle. What I would credit to is if we actually go and look at the scrummaging, and if you look at the side-on shots, Micron does a very good illustration of this. In fact, during training, what Micron does is he'd walk around with a long-handled broomstick, and what the broomstick is used for is to make sure that the front rows, that they're back. So if you're looking at side-on, most front rows just tend to have a little bit of an arc in the back. But if you go back and look at the dominant scrums this last game, the Wallabies put on the Springboks, a nice straight parallel back to the floor. It's what we call a seat of power. So coupled in with some of these changes, and absolutely, Alatoa had a fantastic game, muscling up against these, formidable world champion front rowers, and they just got the squeeze and the drive pretty much on point, and that just caught the Springboks off guard. And Springboks, if you notice, they tend to kind of push on a slight angle to the right-hand side. If you looked at that last scrum, they're actually pushing on the angle, and that's what they kind of lost shape. Whereas the Wallabies were really looking to try and drive as straight as you can. And once you get that seat of power, you get into a nice low bind, and you get that good engage on, and you hold and just squeeze right through. It's actually a fairly straightforward thing. So well done to them. They've clearly worked on the issues over the last 7 days, and I think it was more upstairs, the top 2 inches. They really got the mindset together, and they actually wanted to prove a point to the Springboks. And of course, you saw that the scrum just before halftime, where they actually decimated that Springbok scrum. That, to me, I think in this 2-game series is going to be a significant mental barrier, which the Wallabies have now successfully crossed.
So as Dr. Wright says, yes, South Africa will be better, but the Wallabies will have real confidence and be better as well. They got to guard from overconfidence in that one. Looking forward then to this weekend, how would you go about selection then? The Springboks, clearly, if they're going to win the Rugby Championship, they have to win the next 3 games on the bounce. Whereas the Wallabies, I think they already know that the championship is out of the way, so how do you think? So for the Springboks, is it they have to pick their first choice side for the next 3 games, or can they afford to rotate?
Well, absolutely. The pressure is full, squarely on them, and credibility of the world champs are pretty much, it's pretty much on the line there. Credibility. I'd make 2 key changes, actually. Obviously, try and get Cheslin Colby and then get him as much ball as possible. I think he's, arguably the best winger, best attacking weapon in rugby union on planet Earth right now. And also, I'd look at getting Morne Steyn into the 23 in some form or shape, because, again, goal kicking, he, to me, is a better player distributing rather than Handre Pollard. And I think he's the sort of experience you need. And how many times has Morne Steyn come out and bailed the Springboks last-minute kicking a penalty goal in 2 successful Lions series, and he'll be called upon as well. Everything else, I wouldn't change too much. A bit concerned about Vermeulen's form line. He was just a bit scratchy, and I thought he looked a little bit out of sorts. But overall, they just got to man up and then front up. As far as the Wallabies are concerned,
we'll stick with that for a second. The point about Dwayne Vermeulen is that, look, he's just back from injury. It's his first game back. He's not match fit. I think we can agree that, and that he is, he'll improve from that game time, so I think we'll see him back again. I think it's going to have to be the best side because of that. Whether Morne Steyn should be in there, I'm not. I don't know if the old boy should be there. But so I guess the other question, because ahead of Willemse, I think Willemse needs to be given the opportunity, the chance. They've also got, whilst they are defending that kind of not defending their world championship, but defending their reputation as world champions. They've also got to look forward 2 years as well at 2023 and the next Rugby World Cup. Morningstern will not be there. Let's be blunt.
I get that. I get that. And Willemse is, he's going to be part of this group as part of the future. But the reality is Morningstern is playing his best rugby in his twilight careers, and this is a must-win game. So you can't say no to that sort of experience. And I think short term, the Springboks are sort of in a spot of desperation. So they've got to roll with the experience. And of course, one of the things I also have to say is Van Vermeulen, maybe push him back to the bench and maybe start with Quagga Smith. I love some of the enthusiasm and some of the work rate Quagga came and did off the bench. I mean, he won a turnover penalty. I thought it was actually quite blatantly illegal because he pumped both his fists straight on the ground, and it was a critical turnover, and then they went into touch, and they scored off a fishtail driving maul. So that's probably another tactical change I would look. Probably play Quagga Smith for about 50 minutes and then bring Vermeulen on. So yeah, just they've really got a front.
The problem with that is that Quagga Smith came on for Siya Kolisi in the open side position. So playing two open sides, I'm not sure is the way to go. They had Weiss came on and replaced Dwayne Vermeulen, who's their number 8. And hopefully I'm pronouncing that properly, folks. So yeah, to me that's I don't think I would start with. I don't think you can start with two open sides in this game, to be honest. And I think they found that out during the Lions series when they did try that with Quagga Smith. So we'll see. But yeah, I think it will be their best team. You're quite right. The best team does obviously involve bringing Cheslin Colby back if he's fit. And the only reason he was missing was because of injury. And obviously the other person that's injuring is Peter Steffler-Toy, but he can't come back because he's out for the whole season. From the Wallabies' point of view, how do you go about this? And do you I'm guessing you go with let the same side go again, and then look at rotating for the Argentina games, or do you rotate now and then?
No question. Look, the Wallabies can't get too ahead of themselves, and this the good old saying, never change it's coach's good old adage, which is never change a winning combination. So pretty much, stick with the same sort of 23. I'd probably have a look at ex-Manukau Rover, ex-Mangere boy, Hunter Paisami, because he's back from parental leave. And he could be a real powerhouse in that midfield, particularly putting some big hits in and around that Springbok midfield. But by and large, I think I'd stay with the same 15. Hunter Paisami is that asterisk in the 23. Maybe he comes off the bench. But from a tactical point of view, if I was Dave Rennie, I would just attack at every given opportunity. Because here's a very interesting statistic for you, ladies and gentlemen, the tackle completion rate. So in Test rugby, any decent self-respecting side will make 9 out of 10 tackles. That's about a 90% completion of successful tackles, or a tackle completion rate.
That's anything in the high 80s is good. Anything above 88 is a decent. You've had a good game.
It is. So the Box had 84, so that's 121 from 141, as opposed to the Wallabies, who had a 94% success rate. So that's a very telling statistic. So that showed that these Box are not as good as most people make them out to be, or maybe on that particular day they just missed that trick.
I think they had a flat game. To say they're not as good as look, you don't become world champions, you don't get number 1 ranking if you're bad. So look, they are a good team. They had an off day, and look, if they do it again this weekend, then you can tell me I'm wrong. But I'm going to stick with that one for now. A couple of changes that will have to happen. By the sounds of it, Nick McDermott might be out with an injury, and Alan Alatoa is missing as he goes on paternity leave for the rest of the tournament. So there'll be a couple of changes in that side that are enforced. Oh wow! Apparently James O'Connor might be back as well. So we'll see about that one. But to my mind, it's going to be tough then for someone like Hodge, who would potentially be dropped, who I don't think's done anything wrong in that match day 23, and he adds great versatility. So we'll see how that one pans out. I'm a big fan of Hodge personally, so on that one. But as the sides get named, we will go through them on the Lockdown Beers and Rugby Chat. That's at 5 p.m. every day, so don't forget to join us for those, folks. Yeah, that's the Rugby Championship kind of out of the way. Let's move on then to, we've got the NPC and the Farah Palmer Cup coming up this weekend. Then in the NPC, we've got 4 games. I will be at FMG Stadium on Friday nights for Waikato versus Canterbury. How do you see that one going? That to me is a fantastic clash. Waikato going really well so far this season.
Absolutely. Look, had there been no COVID and had there been no break, I would have said, Waikato would probably have just marched on, because Canterbury are finding themselves in an unusually lower spot on the table. But I think this reset would have
last, you mean?
I think this break is just pretty much it's a godsend for Canterbury, and they would have really done their homework. So I'm expecting this Canterbury side to come back, and I am, based on rankings as we speak, to create a bit of an upset and beat Waikato. So I'm very much in favor of that, because if you look at any sort of history, wherever the Cantabrians have had a bye or a bit of a break, they've always come back and bounced back.
Yeah, it should be. I think it's going to be an absolute cracking one. Obviously, obviously living in the Waikato and covering them, I'm hoping that they can continue their good form. 2 bonus point wins so far this season, as you can see there on the table. Canterbury so far with a win and a loss. At the bottom of the table, they're the only team in the Premiership on negative points difference there, which is an unusual place for them. On Saturday, we've got 2 games: Taranaki versus Wellington. Clearly, Wellington will go into that one as favourites, with Taranaki being the championship side. He says, and as you can see, Taranaki though have had 2 wins so far this season, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Wellington could slip up here.
I'm very bullish about an upset, and again the reset. I like the look of the Taranaki side. They've got some really exciting players out wide, some real good game breakers there. So I'm very bullish on an upset with Taranaki, and I think it's going to be, I wouldn't say super tight. And keep in mind, given that we're coming back, the games aren't necessarily going to be of the highest quality. There will be mistakes. So I think that gives a team like Taranaki a bit of an opportunity, and I am picking Taranaki again to upset the Wellington Lions.
Well, I've always said that Wellington should go into this one as favourites. We then have Northland versus Tasman. As you would have seen, Northland, bottom of the championship, up against the reigning champions Tasman, who have won 2 games so far without bonus points. And you got to say, yeah, this is it's a very tough ask for Northland to come back and have this. Obviously, they've had a little less time to prepare than all the other provinces, because their levels came down slightly slower. Tasman, I expect to win that one on Saturday. Beau, are you going to pull out any kind of stat to disprove that one?
No stats, unfortunately. All the stats look very bleak for the Taniwha, and I think Taniwha are going to feel the full brunt of Tasman, and Tasman should quite easily dispatch them. I'm picking at least 3 tries plus, so maybe 15 to 21 points plus. Tasman should have a fairly straightforward day in the office.
And the final game of the rounds on Sunday, this one is an absolute cracker. It is the Ranfurly Shield. It is also Battle of the Bays, and it's also 5th versus 6th in the Premiership table. I think pretty much everything has been is kind of on the line for this game down in Nelson. This is going to be a tight game. I'm going to be backing my Bay of Plenty. Boa, where do you think they're going to be? How do you see this one going?
Well, look, I do have a slight bias towards the Bay of Plenty. No question. Game of the week. I'm gonna throw something out there for everyone. I can't split these two, particularly on the reset, on the bounce back. I cannot split these two. Therefore, I'm going to go for a draw. There you go.
Wow.
Where did you first? A draw.
So I guess on a draw that Hawke's Bay would then retain the shield in that situation.
They certainly will, but look, it's just too close to call. I mean, I looked at some of the footage. I looked at some of the numbers. We haven't had this sort of result in a while, and I think this is the one. Again, you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, draw is a very low probability result. But if it does happen, don't be surprised, and yours truly will look like an absolute genius.
Yes, well, we'll see. I'm backing Bay of Plenty this one. They've held the title of the Bay for the past few years, so yes, I'm backing them to continue that, even with the new coaching structure there, as they learn as they sort of bed in that one. So I'm backing Bay of Plenty on that one. One of the points that was brought that was mentioned, there's definitely a good return on the TAB for a draw, nocturnal rights, but I wouldn't.
He's onto it.
I wouldn't go there if I were you.
Yeah, he's onto it. Let's say no more.
Aaron's trying to make a joke saying I will go for the Bay team. Yeah, right. Okay. Right then, Nocturnal Rights brings up a point here that says that Shannon Frizzell will be playing for Tasman. Assault charges dropped against him. Okay, so Steve and I had a quick chat about this one earlier today, and the situation. So for me, Shannon Frizzell should not be picked back into the All Blacks this year. I think he needs to stay in New Zealand, going through the rehabilitation and the counselling sessions that he said he is putting himself through. Now, quite what those are is not clear. He just said he's working to not put himself in these situations or not to do this again. Just because charges were dropped doesn't mean that it didn't actually happen. Remember, he is a first-time offender in this situation, so there's a process you can go through where you do some work to say, actually, please drop the charge. I'll do this instead of being charged. So there is an admission that something definitely happened that shouldn't have happened in this place. Whether he accepts full guilt for what happened, I don't really know. But for my mind, he shouldn't be with the All Blacks. He should be here and rehabilitating for the rest of the year. Also, we've seen this situation before with Sevu Reece, who also went through counselling. Now, I'm aware that he went through a process, but there was no transparency. There was no about that. So to my mind, there's lots of sort of throwing accusations on social media at Sevu Reece, but I personally believe that they should be more open with the rehabilitation process so that we know that they have made an effort to change. Simon says, what's happened has been settled in the courts. Who are we to judge? Well, we are entitled to our opinions, and also whilst he plays rugby, his job is to have brands on his jersey, okay, and he represents those brands. So the kind of person he is associated with that, and so the job he has chosen requires that one. As Aaron says, sorry, go on.
This is a bit of a, how can I put it? What's the correct choice of words? I got to be somewhat politically correct about this. I think this is a sort of semi-sensitive issue because I did do a little bit of reading into this particular case. I think there has been a restorative justice meeting where the victim and Shannon have met and they've gone through a certain process. And looks like from that point of view, he and his employer, along with the victim, have done as much as they can to kind of board whatever wounds, whatever harm happened. On the other hand, you're absolutely right, because he is an All Black. He is part of our flagship brand of the national sport, and that comes with certain privilege and responsibility to behave in a certain manner, which is not going to do damage to that particular brand. And there's a massive expectation from the general public at large, because these guys are role models. Now, of course, this has nothing to do, as Simon pointed out, from a legal point of view. Everything is done and dusted, and the legal standing is it's a closed matter now. He's free to play. But I think from a moral point of view, and from what the country has come to expect from some of these guys as brand ambassadors, as role models, far outweighs any other legal standings, the implications, or the lack of it. So I'm absolutely with you and Stephen Harris on that. I think there needs to be some kind of process where he actually has to go through it's kind of like beyond the normal mending of fences, if I were to pick a choice of words, so that he can actually justify his position within the brand and the value he brings both on and off the field. So he's more than welcome to come down here after the NPC season and help me with cleaning the estuary, because tell you what, there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm getting old, and every morning I wake up, I really feel it. But look, I'm very, very pleased that both he and the victim have had a restorative justice process, and this is now behind us. And he's just got to do his thing off the field, and hopefully, he can really focus on what he has to do with Tasman. Whether or not he gets called up to All Blacks, that's an entirely different matter. There's every chance he will, probably going to on the Northern tour. We'll wait and see. And if I was Mr. Frizzell, he has everything to lose, so just keep your head down. Don't worry about going into bars and having a good time for the moment. Just keep your head down, do the work both on and off the field. And then when you get an opportunity, score a hat trick of tries. Everyone will forget everything which has happened, and everything will be fine. And just look, I just wish everyone well in this whole situation, and I'm just pleased that it's at least the legal side of it is out of the way.
Yeah, look, he got diversion, which whatever diversion means, I don't really know. Nocturnal Right says no summary of facts was presented in court. That's true. We've seen a whole bunch of stuff in the media though, and Frizzell disputed it earlier in a court appearance. Okay, fine. The other part is making claims in the media. That's true. You don't get diversion for slapping and punching a woman. Well, I don't know if you do or you don't as a first-time offender. To be honest with you, I don't know what the legal situation in that is. Something happened, but maybe not that what was being said. Says Nocturnal Rights. I'm sure we've heard one side of the story, right? We've heard a side. We haven't heard both sides. I doubt we ever will. So clearly, was it exactly as that person said? Probably not. But either way, what has happened? Either way, what is clearly something has happened. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had to go through diversion, right? So to my mind, that I don't think he should go on the November tour. I think he should be spending his time getting himself right off the pitch as well. We've seen previously players such as Aaron Smith, where off the pitch issues have impacted their on the field performances, and I think he should just make sure he's got everything in place ready to hit the ground running properly in next season. Now, as I personally would like to see some news about the what's the word I'm talking about? About the process he's going through to improve himself, so that we can see that he has made the effort there. But that's a personal point of view. And also, right, so Foster made a practical decision not to take Frizzell to Australia because of the customs entry. Well, that might be the case, but personally, I still think he shouldn't take him on the November tour, full stop. But that's my point of view. on
Yeah,
the
look,
squad.
and if the reality is, if this current bunch of guys play the way they're playing, it's going to be very difficult for him to find a spot in the tour party anyway. So there's that big question mark. So all he can do is play himself into form with his NPC side. And of course, with the rehab and post-event, I know for a fact that the Professional Players Association have lots of processes in place. They're very protective about it, and I can understand why, because there's privacy concerns around it. But one thing I can say is, comprehensively, there are some very good, robust, stringent processes where they go through these programs. I've had a glimpse of it, because with some of the players I've been involved in the past, where they've been fast tracked into NPC sides. I've sort of been involved in the middle, where players have had personal discussions off the field, and being someone involved in helping them get themselves back into it, and get their headspace right. So no question, everything which happens off field, they will be scrutinized, and it will have a direct correlation and impact on what they do on the field. So hopefully Mr. Frizzell will be better off for this entire experience, gets everything sussed out, and then turns into a barnstorming All Black. However, he's got a lot of work to do, because the mob in front of him on tour are having a great time of it.
Yeah, absolutely. One final point here. Aaron says that he's been judged and cleared by the law. Media is not the jury and has nothing to do with it. True. And from a legal point of view, absolutely. From a what is his job as a brand ambassador to do, part of it, then I'm afraid, sorry, the media does have a part to play, because he's a brand ambassador. And now the role model piece, I'm not not so big on that one. But talking about but from my mind, as a brand ambassador, unfortunately, his public image does play a part. Anyway, put that one to bed now. Move on. Simon says, be interesting at the Auckland sides will be allowed to move to Taupo. So yes, interesting here. As someone in Auckland and involved in the sort of Auckland rugby community, is there anything you've heard around possibility of them leaving Auckland?
Yeah, look, word on the street, and a few of my track spies jumping out of the trees. Chinese whispers say that Auckland Rugby have made a very strong business case to the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Enterprise to actually move the entire bubble, the entire squad, out of Auckland to the Waikato region. From what I've been told, it's somewhere in and around the Hamilton area now. I could, and again, guys, these just only information which just comes from third party, so it's just not set in stone. That's the sort of information which is sort of floating around. There's every possibility that will happen, because obviously the uncertainty about case numbers and COVID Delta in Auckland being in level 4, there's no absolute guarantee that we will be going to level 3. We're just going in principle. So I think it's a smart move. But that said, if we do end up going to level 3, they've obviously made plans for that as well. But as things are, yes, they are looking to move the entire squad as a biological bubble, a professional biological bubble, along with all their support staff, to the Waikato district.
And we have to assume that the North Harbour and Counties Manukau will be going through a similar kind of process as well in that one. I'm sure New Zealand Rugby is advising all three of them, and is fully involved in all this sort of stuff. It's interesting. As a Super Rugby franchise, I understand them doing it. There's the money involved and the resources available to Super Rugby franchises are much bigger than they are to NPC teams. You got to remember that some of these NPC players are part-time. They're not full-time professional sports people, and so some of them might have what's what I'm looking for, commitments that mean they can't they can't move with the bubble. We'll see how that pans out for some of them. So yes, I was unsure as to whether the NPC ones would have the resources to do what a Super Rugby one does, but it sounds like they can. So, good luck to them, basically.
Look, I mean, there's a few kids in the Auckland side who I personally know. I mean, they have day jobs. They work in factories and they're not full-time professionals, so it's a big challenge. And who knows? Based on what we've seen, maybe the Auckland side could relocate to Wanaka. And
what are they? Are they all horse trainers or something?
Horse trainers and lawyers.
All horse trainers and lawyers.
Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that idea in there. So the Mayor of Queenstown, if you're tuning in, I said it here first. Get the Auckland NPC side down there, right next to the racecourse. There's this beautiful. They don't race there anymore, but they've got a beautiful little rugby ground, and yeah, there you go.
Well, the Highlanders were supposed to be taking one of their games to Queenstown, weren't they, or to Wanaka, somewhere around about there anyway. So clearly it is an option. It is they have the facilities for something like that. And obviously it's not so right. Yeah, maybe employ QC as well. Yeah, exactly. There is also the option of Taupo when Bay of Plenty were going to do their partnership with China for the China Lions in Global Rapid Rugby. They were talking about playing some of their games out of Taupo. So there are a number of options for these places. I mean, Rotorua, it's another one as well. So there's a number of places that these three teams could base themselves, and because I don't think Hamilton really has the facilities for all three teams to relocate there, along with Waikato. They would get a bit crowded on the rugby pitches and for training, etc. So I wouldn't be surprised if they relocate to different locations. To be honest with you, one of them potentially up to Northland, where they've obviously got the new facilities that have been set up for the Women's Rugby World Cup. So we'll see where they go. We're purely speculating at this time. But sticking with provincial rugby, we have got on Saturday, I will be going to the only Farah Palmer Cup game of the weekend, which is the Bay of Plenty hosting Otago Spirit. In that one, as you can see from the table, both of them have had really tough seasons so far. Both have played 4 games, lost 4. This is their opportunity to get their first win on the table. Very similar records there, as you can see. Points for 49 and 42, points against 120, 118. Otago Spirit, though, kept one of their games close enough to get a bonus point. Bay of Plenty not done so far. So, a real desperate game for these two to base. This is basically who will finish bottom of the table, most likely in this game. So a desperate one on Saturday. Any thoughts on that one, Bart?
Well, look, to be frank, I haven't followed much of the Farah Palmer Cup, particularly with these two teams, and it looks like a bit of a battle of the cellar dwellers. So just judging by that last game, I think was Otago versus was it the Counties Monaco Heat? They got the bonus point against. Probably go with those girls. But who knows? Maybe this might have all the hallmarks for a cracking game. It might go right down to the wire. Just based on what I'm seeing, I think I'd just go with the Otago Spirit, and maybe they just go home under 5 points.
Yeah, look, it's going to be it's going to be a tight one. I think the Otago Spirit really struggled last year, and so it doesn't surprise me to see them down there. Bay of Plenty, though, have, I think, underperformed in my opinion. I think they've got more to them than this. So I'm backing Bay of Plenty to find that. And get the result this weekend. I think one of the things that it's difficult to look at last year's form in some ways, because they had the Sevens ladies were involved in that competition, obviously then, and with Tauranga being the base of the New Zealand Sevens, they had a few players available for the Bay of Plenty, and so therefore, I think they're missing a few of them really in this one. So. I'm backing Bay of Plenty. We'll see how that one goes. As I say, I'll be at this game as a post-match interviews from this game, and also from Waikato versus Canterbury will be on the at DrivingMaul on Twitter, and also New Zealand Sport Radio Facebook page. So keep an eye out for both of those. So where do we go next? Do you want to? Have you seen the piece about World Rugby? Think about having the Rugby World Cup every 2 years. What are your thoughts on that one?
That's just, oh my God. I mean, we might as well go start digging for treasure. It's basically what it is, isn't it? Every 2 years, you just want to, as things are, the global rugby calendar is chocker. And, most nations are finding it next to impossible to get a clear release of their players from ongoing club commitments. So this is only going to throw more chaos into it. And I think every 4 years, that's what fans have been used to. And every 2 years, it's almost devaluing and undervaluing the worth of a World Cup. So for me, it's just too much, too fast, too quick, and just, this is just trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel and trying to milk people for all their worth and just get some easy money in. But yeah, it's just, to me, it's just a nonsensical idea, which I just can't figure out for the life of me who in their right thought pattern would come up with this sort of nonsense.
So essentially, FIFA are looking at it from a football point of view, and hence that's why it's being looked at. As Nocturnal Right says, something like golden goose. Yes, exactly. Don't shoot the golden goose. But once every 4 years is a nice gap because it gives us long enough to think about it and to want to see it again. It's not on us straight away. Also, where does the British and Irish Lions tour fit? If you do this, you would be killing off that concept. There is no way that this would work. The British and Irish Lions could survive with a World Cup every 2 years, and that is such a money spinner for not just for the home nations, but also for South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia. New Zealand have said before, basically they get a windfall every 12 years that they then use to survive the next 11 years until it comes around again. To me, this is it's a non-starter and a pure reaction to say, hey, let's copy football, which is the one sport you cannot compare or you cannot model off, because the level of interest in football is off the scale compared to any other sport in the world. They are the exception to the rule, and everyone else has to work by different rules. So, yeah, a joke of an idea.
And also, Paul, if let's say they go with this twice every 2 years, it'll basically kill off Pacific Islands rugby, because they will absolutely struggle to field a decent side, because as things are, most of the best Pacific Island players don't get released by their clubs, particularly in Europe, for any decent length of period. So by having a World Cup every 2 years, you're going to put even more constraints and more sort of demand on the unions, and they simply don't have the resources for it. So to me, this is just absolute madness. And someone just rolled out a bed in the WR Executive Committee and thought, what are we going to do today? Let's just have a World Cup every 2 years. It's just really ill thought. And also all the domestic competitions, and also from high performance coach planning point of view, it's just going to put everything out of whack. So this is just going to cause chaos. I think we've got a beautiful thing every 4 years. Everyone looks forward to it, and it's something to savor, and it's something to put on a pedestal, and something really worthwhile to aspire to. Don't change it. Just leave it as it is. And I'm not going to say anymore.
So Cornflakes says, how can football fit regional comps into and the World Cup in a year? I've no idea. This isn't a football podcast. I'll leave them to think up that one. Nocturnal Rights is looking for a role at World Rugby. He says he can come up with plenty of stupid ideas and be paid for them as well. So there we go.
You Nocturnal, you mate, you are the man. You figured it out. That is how. I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot. I'll say it anyway. That's how World Rugby functions, and that's why I've probably lost all my hair every time. I want to try and put something forward. It's either too clever, or it's just over-engineered out of realm so that it's in the too hard basket. So if you come up with some stupid, impractical idea, it will get the go ahead. Plenty of resources will be thrown at it, and you will get promoted. It's that simple.
And so there's a lot of short-term thinking in rugby. Absolutely. If you were to sit down, and Sanzar's admitted this in the past, that there was never a long-term plan for Super Rugby, and that's the question. Is there a long-term plan for Super Rugby Pacific? I don't.
No,
I think
no, there isn't.
no.
It's just a gimmick. It's like our South Africans the other weekend. Let's put the ball up in the air and hope something happens. So no, there isn't a long-term plan, and there never will be, because all it is it's got to be short-term. It's like the magic dust. You just sprinkle some magic dust, hope something pops up. If it does morph into something, which I hope it will, there will be some long-term future. But yeah, if you go to Sensa and say, what's your 10, 15-year vision or business plan, chances are they'll say, look, we're working on it. When we figure it out, we'll let you know.
So they did it. They paid for a whole bunch of consultants to come in and do one, and then they didn't release it. Which, but never mind. So that's that one there. Finally, you wanted to have a quick chat about the new laws. So obviously these, the two big ones are the 50-22 kick and the goal line dropout. There is some tweaking around the breakdown, or around rucks, sorry, and how you're allowed to clean out and stuff. But I don't think that's really not ones that some people would see or be aware of. But the 50-22, which we saw for the first time in Tier 1 rugby at the weekend, but we also apparently happened a couple of times in the Canada USA World Cup qualifiers. Do you think they've changed anything?
No, not really, because it's, to me, the problem with rugby is it is the one sport in the world which is right at the top of the list, where every year they tinker with the rules for the sake of trying to figure out what problem they're trying to solve. Now, the problem, or the perceived problem which they're trying to solve, is to speed up the game. But if we look at the evidence outside of the All Blacks and a few of the Pacific Islands, it really hasn't made much difference. Because if you looked at the Wallabies versus Springboks game, the ball was live in play for less than 22 minutes, and everything else was just stop, start. There were more breaks. There is one thing I would recommend, and this is something I've observed over a period of time. If this whole 50-22 rule is to be effective, then the referees really have to speed up the service of the ball being cleared from a ruck. So what that means is, how many times have we seen where the ref says use, and then 15 seconds later the halfback still has the ball on the hands? That needs to stop. If you say use or lose, and if referees actually start blowing the whistle and giving the turnover to the defending side, this game is going to rapidly speed itself up. But that's not happening, unfortunately. And again, the other thing we actually need to look at is simplifying the breakdown. Now, particularly the Pumas, when they played the All Blacks, every other breakdown, what I saw was the Argentinians were leaning on the player who'd been tackled with either one knee or one elbow, and just constantly playing the ball. Now, unfortunately, Nick Berry, who I don't need to go into detail, has been well documented by Mr. Rassi Erasmus, kept making the same oversight. So, these are the areas which actually need to be changed, not try and come up with all these funky rules, which less than 1% have actually come to fruition in real game time. So
yeah, I'm not really dragged into the Razzie thing there, but you're quite right. I mean, it's I think it was Ian Hansen also came out and said that. Sorry, Steve Hansen, not Ian Hansen. Steve Hansen also came and mentioned that he was trying to get that speeding up the play was speeding up the ball. The ruck was the big thing, and look, the breakdown, whilst it's talked about a lot, isn't even in the law book. So look, the law book and the game have diverged, unfortunately, and that is a massive problem for the game. And yeah, the more you tinker with the laws, the more you ask referees to look at, the less they're going to actually be able to look. They can't look at more things. There's only so many things they can look at. They've only got two eyes. It's not. I mean,
we had Luke Pierce. For once I saw a referee actually police the breakdown the way it's supposed to. Where soon as someone had a go and they lost their own body weight, there's only one instance where the Quagga Smith. Every other breakdown, you had one go, and if you didn't have clear release, he'd ping you, and that has been the law for the last sort of 3 to 4 years. It's been drummed in over and over and over again. But for some reason, only a handful of referees choose to police it in the correct way. So that is one area. I'd much rather see the lawmakers and the policemen and policewomen on the field get the simple things right. The forward passes, the knock-ons, easy to understand scrum penalties, clear release of the tackle play. Just get those things right. Don't worry about all these obscure rules which you're gonna try, once in every 40 tests. I.e., scoring a try against the padding of the goalpost. So look, this is just, to me, it's just nonsensical. They're trying to overcomplicate the situation, over-engineer it, simplify it, get rid of all these nonsensical trial rules, go back to what the fans know. And if you ask all the players, do you know all these experimental rules? Chances are less than 10% will knock their head and actually get it right. There you go.
So speeding up the ball is what we're talking about, because that's what defense is all about, slowing down the ball, and attack is all about speeding up the ball. So we'll make it a more attacking game. We've just got one question from the live chat that we'll take, and then we'll wrap things up, which is, Science, do you think Super Rugby should stay away from North America for the North America's sake? Let Major League Rugby be the competition to grow in the rugby in North America. Well, my response to that is Super Rugby should stay away from North America for its own sake. We've already seen that Super Rugby doesn't work if you try and cover it against too many disparate time zones. And playing games in the middle of the night doesn't work. So going over to the USA and having a team in the USA wouldn't work. The only place that might be feasible is Hawaii, but anything further east than that would just be a joke. So yes, let Major League Rugby own the states. It should do, and Super Rugby should just keep away.
Simon, simple answer to the question is yes, stay right away. To add on to that answer, to add on what Paul said, the best place to take Super Rugby is to Southeast Asia. They will bend over backwards for Super Rugby. The crowds will be huge. There is tremendous interest in the All Blacks and Super Rugby. They're absolutely starved of it. And I'm talking about places like Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, certain parts in China. Those are the markets they need to explore. I'm not saying take every game there. Create a roadmap where periodically they do get fixtures. I will guarantee you will have 50,000 plus at a drop of a hat, and there will be so much, there will be so much merchandise and just the ability to spread the game. And this is one area, for whatever reason, Super Rugby have just gone like, we don't want to know about it. So that's my answer.
I'll disagree with you on Singapore, having lived there and having been to Singapore Sevens. They did not get great crowds, and the interest would be purely expatriate. It would not be the locals. No interest in rugby at all. But Hong Kong, yes. Malaysia and KL, yes. Those places could be grown. 50,000, well, we'll see. But they definitely are places for growth in those locations. Thank you very much, Boa, for joining me this evening for the DrivingMaul show, folks. Tomorrow evening, 8 p.m, we'll have the Standoff show, our NRL show, which obviously, as they're in finals period time. And I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. also with the lockdown beers and rugby chat, going through the rugby news from the previous 24 hours. And boy, oh boy, it's amazing how there's half an hour's worth of chat every single day of rugby news. But there we go. Thank you, Boa. Thank you, everyone else.